I'm sure those listening to this have heard this particular response to antinatalism and or Efilism. That being, this is essentially a futile mentality to embody, saying now how this is a movement which is going nowhere. There's also been minds like the YouTuber, if you know, Thinking Ape, who has said before that this philosophy in part is asinine. So with this whole futility response angle, people may say you have to throw back these remarks back to the such said remarker. Firstly, I think it's pretty sick to say that essentially preventing harm is futile. It's never futile to prevent a lost spirit from having to unnecessarily experience a scenario of being imposed into a situation where they are essentially heading towards a inevitable brick wall. So let's get real here. But as said before, like any remark that would get thrown, to these topics, antinatalism and or Efilism, you would have to throw, again, any such said remark back to the remarker. So whenever someone cares enough to say such a thing to you or I, we should obviously, in part, state back to them how their own, quote unquote, personal existence is also futile. That person, that we're talking to would have to admit to this understanding, being, again, that futility of their own existence, which really is not saying much. In essence, we're just describing how this reality is an illusion. So when we eventually all agree towards conceding to this observational reality, when we come to the understanding being said here, it inherently drops us into a clear dilemma that's going on. Because as we should know, we can't have our cake and eat it too. It's similar if we were to look in concepts like moral nihilism. If you watched that past video I made from before. Essentially, we can't make a remark about something, in this case, not caring about preventing future births and deaths, and saying that it's futile, then at the same token, look to protect our own futility of an existence. It's just very hypocritical. Goes back to a video I just made, if you want to check that out, about the flow. And essentially, when you look at the word hypocritical, right, that's not within the true flow. You're just lying to yourself. And the opposite of that is hypercritical, but no one's ever really that. And so you have what? Critical, right? And we should all be critical thinkers. We say these things, right? So when now you're being hypocritical, again, goes back to those concepts of the flow. You're holding on to something that doesn't make sense. Why are you defending something that really isn't anything to defend in the first place? It's just kind of silly. But for a bit of a side remark too with these terms and shit, for how we have a term of nihilism, someone being a nihilist, I just think it's pretty silly. I don't see it that it makes sense to call someone a nihilist. In my eyes, personally, everyone is a default nihilist. It's not like we call people objective observationalists. That's just pretty silly and stupid. We should just essentially keep such labels of any such around those, in this case, that are opposing to this side of, again, just observational reality. Such people are just simply self-deluded because concepts like nihilism is just simply, again, just observing things here. So the labeling game is pretty much a red herring to the point at hand. It's pretty much a moot point in and of itself to look to play this, again, labeling game of who's this or who's not. No, it's just reality, and who doesn't like to, co-sign to what is reality here, and just observing it for what it is. But anyhow, going more into these, just again with the misconceptions from a past video I made, all this is just misconceptions. Everyone's just so fucking stupid. But going further, with this concept of a movement, I have issue with that too. I mean, first off, a movement is not a sentient being. Just like any other concepts we create, like government or quote unquote, we the people. These things do not actually exist in and of itself. They are representing, actual sentient beings that actually behave in similar ways, not exact, right? So we should know we are not entirely clearly within the same point of view for those said such groups just mentioned. We just I think it was in my misconceptions video. We know we're not all gonna agree with each other. So really, in actual reality, the people who mention, these concepts that this is a movement in that conventional sense, they're really just superimposing some type of monolithic goal that really is not there. You can look to argue more so with the Efilism form of philosophy, but I mean, for any authentic, mature mind, we know that this is an abstract, hypothetical concept more than anything. So again, let's get real here. Why the fuck are people trying to make things more than what it is? And in reflection, the only goal for the philosophy of antinatalism is just defining how clearly the imposition of birth and death is, by the way of procreation, it's not ethical. That's all it's doing. In terms of what people look to do on top of that, that's its own thing. But it's just describing how something is unethical. And what you look to respond to that as, that's your own fucking cause, not mine, not in totality, everyone. It's just this whole concept of us having a unified goal. It just doesn't make sense to me personally, because we're just not happening. No one's doing anything to that extent. It's just people that are just trying to get a one up on somebody else because I guess they feel like they're, I don't know. But again, it's just funny how nobody has come to refute this asinine position too. Not that it can really be done. But this is in part because most people, frankly, just have no principal inkling to the true contemplation of this dilemma that we're describing. And this is an individual philosophy at bottom. So, there's people that think that there's going to be some type of future possibility. And I'm not saying it's not necessarily a possibility, but it's nowhere in current observational reality where you have things like some type of political mandate that's going to restrict someone from procreating. Again, not saying that that's not going to happen. I'm just saying who the fuck is doing any such cause. Point to where the fuck that's happening. There's only people talking on black screens and typing and messaging each other on black screens. That's all that's going on. To say that there's any type of force, it's, you have, of course, sayings that people have said. I'm sure those hearing this have heard, when this viewpoint of antinatalism or Efilism gets placed into a conversation, there's always going to be somebody that says, essentially, don't force your views onto me. Don't force your philosophy. You can, decide not to procreate if you don't want to, but you can't force me not to. But again, maturity, honesty, fairness, if we're really, looking within observational reality, there is literally no such idea of any such force going on to anybody. We are only just talking back to each other on black screens or through whatever marginal in-person, in real life outreach that we may do. No one's forcing anyone to do anything. First off, this whole message is not for most people. And the people that say this know that intuitively. So it's just so silly how I see people look to, and it's not a refutation. It's just a response to antinatalism. It's just kind of like what's another one? It's like when people say get help, get therapy. It's just like they don't care about the actual situation on hand. It's just an offhand statement, essentially, in my eyes. But there's literally, again, no force going on. It's just, I believe in part it's due to how the people that say that, they themselves are having an internal battle within their own mind. So that's the force that they may be mentioning because they're able to see to some extent level of awareness, the clear level of how this is screwed up, the dilemma, how this is, again, just the circumstance going on. It's just a screwed up process that's going on. So hence, from that point, the cognitive barriers then look to, of course, do its thing and prevent any further contemplation from going on. But yet and still, like I said before, it's only ironic how they are in turn, pretty much forcing you and I to have to come through this process at all from the, jump to go through this process of birth and death. So they're the ultimate ones that are forcing anyone to do anything. So it's just so silly how they look to make these concepts like that. Oh, don't force that. You're going to make me not procreate, while you're forcing, all these sets of impositions now to the unborn. It's just silly. And then at the same token, they want to not be able to contemplate, conceive the abstract hypothetical thought of, the unborn and how they don't consent to this existence. And now people want to say, oh, that doesn't make sense. But they want to talk their own sense that doesn't make sense. So, again, all the time I look to say the words honesty, maturity, and fairness, because if you look to repeatedly say those types of things, people can't get away with what they're saying because they're just talking a bunch of bullshit. Just talking a bunch of bullshit. But for anyone not already in the know about this, antinatalism, more than anything, again, specifically with antinatalism, not necessarily Efilism, it's more so a non-movement. It's implying a non-action. We're telling people not to do something. Of course, in this regard, not to bear a sentient creature. So this obviously does not take any political advocacy. Nobody has to force someone not to do something. And of course, for those that are not going to do it, they're not going to want to do it. It's the whole point is just spreading the awareness. People are not aware, which is in point why I care to even make these commentaries outside of my own personal mental benefits. Because personally, I just see it that we're just a bunch of bitches. I don't see these types of discourses happening enough. I know it's a very touchy subject, but again, if we're being mature, if we're caring to embody any type of commendable trait that we would like to say is, a possibility in this realm of existence, then this is something that we would have to do to some extent. And obviously, given that you and I listening to this have some type of inkling to the criminality going on, when the opportunity presents itself, especially in our actual personal lives around those that we personally actually care about, we should mention it to them. Because again, monkey see, monkey do. People do not fucking know a thing. People don't think. I don't know how much people really know. So we have to put people on, because this is, again, telling people not to do something. So to say that that's futile to tell and mention about how we don't necessarily have to do something that's very costly, risky, ineffective, a bunch of inadequacies that gets, embedded in what that is with, again, procreation. It's just silly. It's just silly how this is now asinine, futile. It's a lost cause. No, this world is that lost cause. This is looking to prevent and clean up this mess. So to say that that's futile or whatever the fuck, it's just silly. But yeah, we should be comfortable to mention these things to those that we love, because if they love us back, then they would let these conversations happen, okay? And if they don't, then let that be assigned to you. Let that be assigned to you. But it seems people think that this existence, with this point, again, with the whole futility part, it's like they think this is like a video game that we're playing. And, we all say that, like, oh, life's a video game, a simulation. That in this case, to win the game, we have to end all suffering, right? Because if we don't end everything, then nothing really matters then, right? Even though nothing already, doesn't matter from what we all say, right? But, it's just all these things are so fucking dumb. But again, this is a attempted superimposition that is being placed to conform for a monolith to this philosophy for a idea of a goal. Okay, yeah, you can imply that antinatalism is to end suffering for all, but again, for how I see it, it's just the definition of fucking how the birth and death is unethical. So that's in and of itself that. Whatever you like to say on top of that, fine, but that's not in and of itself the actual gist of the conversation. That's again, the whole ending suffering for all. What does that even mean? That's like ending world hunger. That doesn't even make sense. People are always going to be hungry, and people are always going to procreate. This conversation already from the jump, if you're here, you should know it's not for most people. But that doesn't mean that we can't, look to bring more awareness of this to most people. People should at least know. And at the very bottom, people do not know a lot of things. And this is in part, in many extents, one of those things. So yeah, I just really get irritated with people, how they say stuff like that. And obviously you get their point, but it's like, if you care to make any type of point in this conversation, then why the fuck are you talking about that? If you are talking about something that's futility, doesn't make sense to even embody it, then why are you embodying what you're saying? Get the fuck out of here, keep that to yourself, essentially, because you're not of any utility. You're of much futility yourself. So just keep that to yourself and move the fuck on. Why are you entertaining something that doesn't have any effect on you? These people are crazy, in my eyes. This is not a 4-course class, or some shit. We're telling people to literally abstain from doing something. It's very simple, for any modest mind, spiritual mind to, grasp. And I think it's also effective to mention any type of child-free aspect, because of course that's going to be a wider banner to people. Of course, being more, I don't want to even say selfish, but just self-serving, and including aspects to how, of course, it indirectly aids your own existence when you're not creating much more of a mess for your existence to have to clean up with creating further dependencies. So in my eyes, really, it's within the resonance of antinatalism to look to embody some form of child-free mentality as well to others, because, of course, that's just going to cling on to others more about, how they can get a bigger bang for their buck, I guess, if, they don't do something that just is completely asinine, the true asinine. And it just goes back to ethics. And this was one of my first few videos made, antinatalism and ethics. At bottom, we're just at first mentioning that people are not ethical. And then if you want to say, for anyone that's opposing to upkeeping ethics, if you're saying that, that doesn't matter, that ethics, who gives a fuck, then you're just a two-faced hypocritical buffoon, because why now are you living in any such said society that's looking to uphold their own standard to such ethics and moral code? So it just goes back to these concepts like moral nihilism and, it's just, these people are just, they're two-faced. Everyone's two-faced, but some people are just so bad that it makes it that I make videos like this and other people, because it's just people have to get pointed out on their bullshit. And we should do it more. We should definitely do it more. I'm definitely interested to see the future of things, because this type of mentality, this type of thought is just so obvious to those that come to it and understand it and are genuine with it, that, you look at things like, any past historical thing, and you can look at, how are people so bad? No, how are people so bad right now? Why are we, still inflicting bad things onto others right now? Let's fuck all the rest of things or blaming other people. We have to look at our own selves. This is a one-on-one conversation. It's not changing the world. It's changing our own lives. And that's not futile. It's not. And so we should all look to definitely mention any type of inkling to this type of perspective, point of view, philosophy when we can. When you see somebody, if you see somebody, listen. If you see somebody essentially try to make a point of any moral, ethical manner, whether it be anything, but of course it's within some type of morality. Okay, if someone cares now to look to point out some type of morality and how it's flawed in the sense of someone's not upkeeping a certain standard behavior that is essentially just more spiritual, right? Less harm being inflicted. If someone's wanting to pinpoint something that's wrong, well, this is the ultimate wrong going on. So if we're going to point out what's fucked up in this world, well, this is the most fucked up thing. And so to say now that that's futile, asinine again, I'm going to end it here. But again, this is fucking dumb.